Hey, what's up? It's me, Mr. Aaron, Aaron the History Buff again. Welcome back to another video. How's everyone doing today? So in today's video, we're going to be doing another history video, but this time we're also going to be doing, it's another Roblox game, just like I covered with other video games in this channel, Amnesia and Roblox Guts and Black Power. In this game, we're actually going to be looking into another fan-made, like, of the Guts and Black Power games, known as, like, and that's also on Roblox. This is called The Last Dawn, which is another zombie game, but it actually takes place during the American Civil War in the 1860s. So in this video, I'm only gonna be covering over just like basically the different maps that you guys like basically play in this game here, and but pretty much all the maps, and yeah, so we're gonna be doing that. But before we get into this video, if you guys have not yet, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment and turn on the bell notifications. That way you get notified by every video that I'll be posting in the channel. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So let's get to it. All right, here we go. The first map we got in the game here is Siege Fort Polotsky from April 10th to 11th of 1862. It was a total Civil War battle for the Union forces that captured the key Confederate masonry fort near Savannah, Georgia, using innovative rifle artillery to breach its walls in just 30 hours. This victory was led by Q.A. Gilmore, close to the port to Savannah, and rendered the traditional coastal masonry forts obsolete. The following of a 212-day investment, the Union forces established batteries of the Typee Island and bombarded the fort with 36 guns, including the new Perriott rifles and the James rifles. The bombardment proved that the rifle cannon could destroy the masonry, changing the coastal defense strategies forever. Colonel Charles H. Ulmester was surrendered to the fort to Union General David Hunter after the walls were breached and protected the Union blockade, forcing the Confederacy to stop using the port. So yeah, after heavy siege firing, and also the battle also resulted in a lot of heavy bombardment here until the Confederates surrendered to the maneuvered like Union troops. All right, let's keep going. All right, so next map we have is Grist Mills here, which the Samuel Grist Mills is a historic site that's located near the Kinney Civils in Washington County in Maryland, built around 1820 on Little Antietam Creek, and the five-story stone brick structure served as a Union hospital during the 1862 Civil War Battle of Antietam. It is listed as the National Register of Historical Places. Samuel Prey purchased the mill in 1847 and rebuilt it in 1850. It was a prosperous operation, ranking it among the top 5 mills in the country in the 1880s. The mill ceased operations in 1926 and has been preserved, partly restored, and is part of the historic landscape surrounding the Antietam battlefields. So yeah, this was built in around the 1820, and it was used as like basically where women and were treated as like basically all the soldiers and heal them or for during the brutal battles of the U.S. Civil War of the Battle of Antietam here, which maneuvered and took heavy losses against like the Confederate soldiers until it was then run later on by it was one of the most brutal battles ever until the Union but the Union still fought to maneuver back in against the Confederates and during around this time. All right, let's keep going. Now, the next map we have is Dunkers Church. So, in 1852, it was built in 1852 by the German Baptist Brethren, and the Dunkers Church in Sharpsburg, Maryland, is a simple whitewashed house workshop for a specific congregation because it became a focal point of the in the September 7, 1862, also for the Battle of Antietam, but it was heavily damaged by artillery and used a hospital before being reconstructed. It's situated on the Confederate left flank. The church has been target of Union attacks. After the battle, it was heavily damaged and used Confederate medical station and possibly an mining station. Although it was repaired after the battle, it was used until 1900. The church was destroyed in a windstorm in 1921. It was rebuilt in the Civil War, sentimental in a cementennial in 1961 to 1962, using its same original materials, including many of the original bricks that you see, like you see one on the church here. So basically they kind of use this as a fort because they have cannons and everything to fight against like the Confederates, as well as also, but it has been really bombarded. But this was kind of also like in the Gray's Mist, they were also basically used this as a hospital before it was bombarded, then took over with the Confederates, yeah. And Union, but and then was charged targeted with it as like Union attacks. All right, go to the next. Now we have the next map we have is Elkhorn Tavern, and it is a historical site in the Pea Ridge National Historical Park, Arkansas, built in around 1833 and renowned for its central role in the another 1862 Civil War battle in the Battle of Pea Ridge. A tavern is served as a field hospital, and it's also a headquarters for both the Union and the Confederates during the conflict. It was a reconstructed into two-story wood frame structure, like if you see it built here, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The Battle of the Elkhorn Tavern took place on March 8th to 8th to 1862, and it was owned by before that it was owned by Jesse and Polly Cox. The tavern was a focal point of the fighting, and the family reportedly in the cellar during the battle. And the original building was burned down during the war here, but it was then got back to reconstructed back again in 1865, restored by the National Park Service, and it was to build back until fixed until the after the Civil War was over. All right, let's go here. Now we have the Battle of Antietam, took place on July 22nd of 1864, which was a decisive Union victory during the Civil War, and it crippled the Confederate defenses, boosting the Northern morale here and securing President Lincoln's re-election. And Union General William T. Sherman's forces held off the intense assaults by the Confederate General John B. Hood, and southeast of Atlanta. Despite that, General James McPherson and the Union held the field, causing the 8,500 Confederate casualties. Atlanta was a critical rail and manufacturing hub. Its fall was essential to Union strategy to break the Confederacy. Union forces suffered around like 3,600 to 3,700 casualties, while the Confederates had lost over 5,500 to 8,500 dead casualties, devastating blow for their forces. Although the battle was a setback for the Confederates, the city did not officially fall until September the 2nd of 1864, and after a month-long siege. And this was like basically, that the Union soldiers that were basically crushing into Atlanta, and that by that time, that the Confederacy was in like basically a long-term collapse here, and they were losing their slaves, as well as also, that their economy was basically crippling, and their soldiers were not well disciplined, and like basically not well armed, and because they cannot, and also that they could not reach into Washington D.C. And also like that because they did not have any food and better weaponry than like the Union had, and yeah, and then there's also crushing up also their cotton industry and their production, and it was not known until before General Robert E. Lee surrendered then to Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse here in 1865, officially ending the U.S. Civil War. All right. Now we have the next map, the battle, which is we got New Orleans. It was founded in, I mentioned this also in my last video where we covered also the Battle of New Orleans in my War of 1812 video. So, but let's cover this time we're going to cover over the full history. So, the New Orleans was created in 1718 by Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne Bienville. New Orleans was established as a strategic French colonial colonial port at the mouth of the Mississippi River. Later, it was a cultural one with French, Spanish, African, and indigenous influences. It was then later transferred to Spain in 1763 before briefly returning to France, and then it was acquired to the U.S. in the 1803 via Louisiana Purchase that was acquired later accepted by Thomas Jefferson. And it was also then later also afterwards that it was also during around this time of Louisiana Purchase territory that both Lewis and Clark here were basically head off and went into an expedition into the Louisiana territory where they met up with Native Americans like Sacagawea here, in which they then later to travel and lead them into their own native peoples and their different tribes and their different cultures, as well as also packed us south of the Mississippi River and going into like many of the Oregon like mountain regions and so on. And it was then there was also a battle that was during the new back on New Orleans. It was fought and there was a battle in New Orleans that took place on January the 8th, 1815. It was a decisive victory of the War of 1812, occurring after the peace treaty was signed, which was the Treaty of Ghent that I mentioned in my last video. The victory in the War of 1812 occurring, and then General Andrew Jackson defeated the city of a diverse force, inflicting over 2,000 casualties on the British side, and it was suffering fewer than 100, securing Mississippi, marking the final battle of the war, and. And the city was also developed in a unique Creole identity, blending the French and the Spanish roots with the enslaved African and West Indian cultures, defining its food, music, and it also included a bit of jazz. I think I might have spelled music. That's my bad here. But in the 1800s, it was a major, wealthy, bustling trade port for cotton and sugar, and the city was taken in by Union forces in 1862 during the Civil War, and it grew into a major port and following improved plumbing technology and expanding into surrounding into low-lying areas. Because this was also, that like when also like basically when Ulysses S. Grant also basically with the commanded the Union troops and fought a devastating, brutal battle, and the battles such as Shiloh and the Battle of Vicksburg later in 1864. Until then, like it would before and marking those battles, that was significant that the Union troops were able to control trade routes and the supply routes into also around like in the Mississippi River until they will go all the south until they later occupy into or reach all the way to New Orleans. Yeah, and it was one of the most important factors also why the Union also was able to crush the Confederates during the U.S. Civil War here later on. And yeah, and now in the final map in the Last Dawn game here, we have Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry, if you don't, it was located in the Potomac of the Havana River in West Virginia. It is historically significant. It established in 1733, renowned its role in the industrialization. It was chosen by George Washington for the U.S. Armory and the Arsenal in 1799, and it became a hub for manufacturing, pioneering, and interchangeable parts in the early 19th century. But in 1859, the abolitionist John Brown, the Federal Arsenal, was hoping to ignite a slave revolt, an event that coincided as a catalyst for the Civil War, because basically John Brown was basically hoping that he rose up in the rebellion and invoked violent wars against like slavery and so he basically hoped that he would go raid on Harper's Ferry and basically trade all the weapons to many of the enslaved African Americans and basically hope they would then also rise up and then basically rebel. But unfortunately, this did not succeed. Brown was then eventually captured and he was then later basically executed, which then later also increased like a lot of high tensions between like the U.S. and the Confederate States here before the Civil War ended and before in 1860 when Abraham Lincoln was then later elected as the 16th U.S. president. And also, and due to this location, the town changed hands 8 times between the Union and the Confederate forces as a key transportation hub during the Civil War. And yeah, but for then, like it was then returned into the back to the Union soldiers until later on after the U.S. Civil War. Okay, And yeah, that's basically about it. And I think I might have wrote this one twice. Oops, my bad. And and yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. So yeah, I hope you guys that's pretty much about it. I hope you guys basically enjoyed it. And if you guys liked it, so if you guys still liked it so far here, and if you, I hope you basically learned something new here. And if you want to see, still want to see more history content like this, then what are you waiting for? Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment and turn on my bell notifications. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in my next video. So, Mr. Aaron's out. Peace.